It was the most captivating crime in recent memory.
At this very moment, there is a manhunt for the person who shot and killed the CEO of a leading health insurer.
The grainy footage of the murder looked like something out of a spy thriller. It was strange. In America's largest city, teeming with surveillance cameras, the assailant just slipped away.
Breaking news at 5, a week-long manhunt ends with an arrest in Pennsylvania.
The whole case is bizarre. The man accused of the crime, Luigi Mangione, was the valedictorian of his prep school, Hillman Academy. He graduated cum laude from the University of Pennsylvania with a degree in computer engineering. He seemed to have it all. And yet this former counselor at Stanford University's prestigious summer camp for science nerds allegedly fashioned a handgun from a 3D printer, stalked his prey at dawn, killed Thompson, and then evaded the cops for 6 days. The feds finally arrested him at a McDonald's eating a hash brown in the middle of Pennsylvania. If the court finds Mangione guilty, we'll have to ask, why did he do it? If he was the one to pull the trigger, then something inside of him snapped. But the killer wasn't the only one to snap. Something also snapped in us, because for millions of people, the victim of this murder, a father, a husband, and a fellow high school valedictorian, Brian Thompson, became the villain. Mangione was recast as a hero who shot a man in the back. Even a U.S. senator seemed to have some sympathy.
Violence is never the answer. This guy gets a trial who's allegedly killed the CEO of UnitedHealth. But you can only push people so far.
But Luigi Mangione is not the first alleged terrorist to be feted as a rock star. More than 50 years ago, a West German columnist abandoned her family and her social status to pursue revolution. She bombed, killed, stole, and was worshipped for doing so. Her name was Ulrike Meinhof. I'm Eli Lake, and this is Breaking History. In this episode, we examine the Meinhof-Mangione complex. What happens when someone with all the right connections, born into privilege, decides to break rad? Ulrike Meinhof's story begins in Oldenburg. She was born in 1934 into a world of trauma and doom, Nazi Germany. Her aunt was forced to wear the yellow star that marked her out as a Jew. Persecution, madness, and total war engulfed Meinhof's childhood. She was 11 years old when Hitler killed himself in the bunker. Life inside the family home was no more secure. Her father died when she was 6, her mother when she was 16. Before she graduated from high school, Meinhof's home was a tomb and her country a crime scene. She was clever and intellectually ambitious. At university, she made a name for herself as a left-wing firebrand involved with the anti-nuclear movement. When Meinhof was 24, she met Klaus Rainer Roll, who would become her editor and publisher. They fell in love and became a glamorous couple in Hamburg. They had twin daughters, owned a lavish villa, and hosted great parties with leading artists, writers, and thinkers. Together, the couple ran a cutting-edge journal called Konkret. It blended high-end cultural coverage with left-wing politics. It ran nude photos and refused to capitalize proper names and places. Everything in Konkret was radical, you see, including its grammar. And Meinhof was a figurehead in this world as Konkret's star columnist. In the 1960s, German progressives would see themselves reflected in her righteous and strident articles.
Am Tisch hier sind, hier rechts, Frau Ulrike Meinhof aus Hamburg, Kolumnistin der Zeitschrift Konkret. Ihre Autorität beruht auf den Argumenten, die sie vorbringt als Kolumnist.
Then, in 1967, Meinhof's life began to unravel. She discovered her husband Klaus was having an affair. After catching him in the act, she packed up the twins, Regina and Bettina, and moved to an apartment in Berlin. Her life in Hamburg was over. Her new city was on the verge of rebellion. 1967 was a time of upheaval across the West. There was anger in the air. The energy of Berlin transformed Meinhof forever. She was a 33-year-old mother of two, but the new friends she made in the capital were younger and wilder. There was Gudrun Einslin, an attractive PhD student who had briefly studied in the States and appeared in experimental political films. And there was Einslin's lover, Andras Baader. Baader was a charismatic sociopath. He had moved from Munich to escape the law and had a fondness for drugs and guns. In 1968, Andras Baader and Gudrun Einslin turned up the volume, claiming responsibility for setting a department store ablaze in Frankfurt. They turned their subsequent trial into a spectacle, smoking cigars, hurling vulgar epithets at the judge. They were courting public attention, arguing that the department store fires were a political act intended to stir the people out of their apathy and see the horror of the Vietnam War for what it was. Meinhof was becoming more and more susceptible to the menacing charms of Baader and Einslin. She had continued publishing in Konkret, while the magazine remained under the supervision of her now ex-husband, Klaus Rohl. But in a sign of her ossifying politics, she quit her position at the magazine. In an article for a rival publication, she explained that Konkret was becoming an instrument of counter-revolution. By 1970, Meinhof's life was being swallowed by her politics. Einslin and Baader were now fugitives, on the run following the arson attacks. Meinhof allowed them to hide in the apartment that she shared with her two daughters. It became a hub for revolutionary political action. Eventually, Andras Baader was busted. Baader's old comrades in Meinhof's apartment began planning the first operation of what would become the Red Army faction. The plan to free Andras Baader relied on Ulrike Meinhof's national reputation as a political journalist. But it would be the last time she would be able to play this card. Meinhof applied to meet with Baader to interview him for a book. Permission was granted, and Baader was transported to the Central Institute for Social Questions at Berlin's Free University. When Baader arrived, he sat beside Meinhof at a desk as a pair of guards watched from a distance. Suddenly, two commandos burst in, dressed in wigs and ski masks, armed with handguns and tear gas. This wasn't an interview. It was a jailbreak. As the RAF stormed the library, the hired gun shot a security guard in the gut. Big mistake. He survived, but was grievously wounded. In this moment of unexpected violence, Meinhof made the most important decision of her life. The original plan had been for her to sit still and act surprised, as though she was only there to do the interview. That way, she could have held on to her life, looked after her children, and enjoyed the best of both worlds, radical politics with a bourgeois salary. But something had snapped, and she wasn't going back to a normal life. That day in the Institute, Ulrike Meinhof was through with protest and was on a doomed path to try to put an end to all that she disliked.
Did the pigs really believe that we would let Comrade Baader sit in jail for 2 or 3 years? Did any pig really believe we would talk about the development of class struggle without arming ourselves at the same time? Start the armed resistance. Build up the Red Army.
Protest is when I say I don't like this. Resist is when I end what I don't like. Resist the banks cause they got the credit. Resist the state cause they got the guns. Resist the cops cause they gonna get it. Find me slipping when I'm on the run. All my brothers in the RAF.
You've been watching an excerpt of my podcast, Breaking History. Find it on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.